I wanted to share a story that's really funny, and then we can talk about the story and see what we can learn from it. So this was early on in the movement, and Kirtanananda was very austere. That was his nature. And he wanted the other devotees to be austere. And you may have heard that in the early days, Prabhupada had a jar of gulab jamans. You know gulab jamans soaking in sugar water? And he allowed the devotees, whenever they wanted, to take a gulab jaman. So Prabhupada understood that he's taking away meat eating, illicit sex, intoxication, and gambling, which was kind of very important for these people. Some were basically addicted to these things. And so prasadam, as we know, is a major outlet of sensual satisfaction. Of course, it's not sense gratification per se, but you understand what I mean. When we give up the other activities that we're so used to, especially as new devotees in a new movement, Prabhupada considered that if we have gulab jamans, then we can let the devotees take it, and then they'll be peaceful and pacified. Because I think Prabhupada kind of saw like this drug addiction, LSD, marijuana, he'll replace it with prasadam addiction. And obviously it worked. So, but because Kirtanananda was very austere, he made a rule, only one gulab jamun a day. So this was not Prabhupada's rule, and as a result, everyone was very concerned. As you know, sometimes you'll hear something, an instruction, or there'll be a policy, and you'll think, but Prabhupada never said that, or Prabhupada never did that, so it won't sit right. Or you'll think Prabhupada never said it or did it. Maybe he did and you don't know. So all the devotees were thinking, well, you know, Prabhupada lets us eat as many as we want, and now he's saying only one. So that didn't sit right with them, and they were obviously unhappy about it. It just didn't work for them. So they went to Prabhupada, as they would in the early days. Whenever you had a problem, you would go to Prabhupada. And so they went to Prabhupada and they said, Kirtanananda said we can only have one gulab jamun. And Prabhupada said, he said, you can all have as much as you want, but Kirtanananda, he can only have one. So Prabhupada was the master of time, place, and circumstance. So we can understand that there's a tendency for us sometimes to want to be austere, and then think, well, everyone should be as austere as I am, and even become upset if they're not. And Prabhupada was kind of showing Kirtanananda, okay, that's okay for you if you want to do it, but don't force your austerity on others, especially if it's an austerity that I didn't give. There's also a story, devotees often ask about Chaturmasya, did Prabhupada follow it? And Prabhupada explained that if you're going to follow it, you don't shave, you grow your hair, and some devotees were doing that. And Prabhupada didn't like that. He didn't like when devotees had beards and grew their hair. And so he asked them why they were doing that, and he said, well, following Chaturmasya. And then Prabhupada said, well, if you're going to follow Chaturmasya, that means you eat once a day unspiced khichdi, and the khichdi is on the ground, I guess on a plate, banana leaf or something. You put your hands behind your back and you go down and eat like a dog eats. And it's the only meal of the day, and you go down, and if you come up, you have to stop eating. So he said, and then 64 rounds. He said, so if you're going to grow your hair and beard, so-called Chaturmasya, then you have to do everything. And Prabhupada did not follow Chaturmasya. He was asked. He didn't follow. And Prabhupada's whole mind was focused on preaching. And from what we can see and understand from what Prabhupada did and what he said, that was the real austerity. Sacrificing your time, energy, dealing with non-devotees, dealing with management. That was far greater austerity than any other austerity we do. Of course, austerity is nice if you can do it. But Prabhupada wanted us, so to speak, as far as possible, to save our austerity points for preaching, not just to be austere for austerity's sake. So that's an interesting story. And I'll end with one funny story. It just shows Prabhupada's sense of humor and compassion. And I forget exactly what it was, but there was something devotees weren't doing right or forgetting or something. So Prabhupada said, I curse you, or something like, if you continue this way or if you don't rectify, I curse you that you'll have to take birth in your next life in India. Because when Prabhupada gave that curse, living in India was very difficult. It was very common for the devotees to get dysentery, also malaria, jaundice. And in the early 70s, India was kind of like America in the 1930s. Everything was difficult to do. Just to make a phone call was difficult. So the devotees were in total anxiety. Said, oh no, we don't want to take birth in India. Shruti Kirti was saying that he would serve Prabhupada for a period of time, 6 months a year, and then he would take a break, and then Prabhupada would come back, say, why don't you join me again? And then one time Prabhupada said, I'm going to India. And Shruti Kirti didn't want to go to India because he got so sick there. And Prabhupada's inviting him to join him, and the only reason he doesn't want to join him is because India was so difficult. So when Prabhupada said, I curse you to take birth in India, it's not India today. The devotees didn't want to be there, at least 90+% just found it very difficult. So they were in total anxiety because they took this curse seriously because they had done something wrong. And they believed that, if we don't rectify, this is what's going to happen. And they were saying, we don't want to take birth in India. And they were saying, we have to ask Prabhupada, can he reduce or alter the curse? So finally, they got up the nerve. One of them, they kept asking one of them, ask Prabhupada. He said, Prabhupada, you said if we don't do this or because we did this, we'll have to take birth in India. And they expressed anxiety. Well, that's like, we don't really want to take birth in India. And then Prabhupada said, okay, if you do this, then you'll have to take birth in America. So, did Prabhupada really mean that? Or, so Prabhupada liked to joke, but we also see that he was very pliable to the, obviously this is not entirely 100% real, that Prabhupada's cursing his devotees to take birth again. But Prabhupada's very accommodating, and oftentimes the devotee had service, and it was just like too difficult. And Prabhupada wouldn't, in some cases would force, but often he would say, it's voluntary. I can't force you. So Prabhupada understood that. Although the disciples should do whatever the Guru says, Prabhupada also understood as voluntary, and they have to do it out of love. And so it was very rare that he forced devotees in general. Maybe his leaders, who he was relying on, he would need them to do certain things. But often he would just ask, would you like to do this? Which meant, I want you to do this. But he's presenting it gently and giving them the option.